Now on the town hall, our continuing coverage of the Buffalo mass shooting and the major development today as 26 federal charges were filed against the suspected shooter, whose name we rarely use, but who now faces at least the potential for the death penalty.
This is a death penalty eligible crime. The Justice Department has a series of procedures that follows. First, of course, there has to be an indictment. After the indictment, then the regulatory procedures will be followed, and the families and the survivors will be consulted.
Prior to that news conference, the Attorney General and several of his top deputies who came here with him walked from the Apollo Theater to the site of the memorial for those who died. You can see he laid flowers there. They then returned to the theater to inform the families of those charges prior to making them public. Pete Williams is the longtime justice correspondent for NBC News, and he's been kind enough to join us live here tonight. Pete, you cover the Attorney General on a regular basis. He could have made this announcement from where you are in Washington, D.C., but he came here to Buffalo. He wanted to meet with the families first, and then he had this news conference. He took questions. What is your takeaway and the significance of him doing that?
Yeah, I think it's on two levels. I think corporately, the Justice Department wanted to demonstrate how important the case was. You pointed out that it wasn't just the Attorney General, but it was some of his top officials, a senior official from the FBI, demonstrating the federal government's commitment to prosecuting this case, because there's a very strong federal interest here in trying to combat racism. But secondly, it's the personal part of the Attorney General, who's always thought that the civil rights mission of the Justice Department was one of its most important, and I think he wanted to demonstrate that as well.
Yeah, Pete, he even talked about the history and the formation of the Justice Department and how it relates to racism in this country. On a similar note, this administration and AG Garland have most certainly made prosecuting hate crimes a priority. Can you tell us about some of the policy changes that have happened within the Department of Justice, and not just in terms of prosecuting cases, but remember the AG also controls the FBI, right? So it's investigating these cases as well. What should we know about that change in priority?
Yeah, I think you're right about that the government is now emphasizing these cases. They brought about something like 36 of them under the Biden administration, a much more aggressive approach. The Justice Department has set up a new infrastructure within the government, within the Justice Department, to handle these cases, and is also encouraging U.S. attorneys to charge these cases when the facts are appropriate, and encouraging all the FBI's offices to be on the lookout more for these potential crimes and be more aggressive in investigating them. So it's an approach to be more forward-leaning on looking for these potential cases, bringing the charges, trying to seek the maximum penalty when it makes sense. And of course, in this case, you have the fact that New York is not a death penalty state, but these are death-eligible counts under the federal system. I'm told that no decision has been made on who's going to go first here, whether it'll be a state trial first or a federal trial first. The federal government's usual policy here is to sit back, let the state and local officials go first, and then step in later. But that was not followed in the 2015 Charleston church shooting, for example, when the Justice Department went first. But in any event, I don't believe any decision has been made on that yet.
Great to get your insight on this. Pete Williams is justice correspondent with NBC News. Pete, thanks for your time. Good to see you.
You bet.